Are birds real?
God, birds are real! Birds are real! Pigeons!
Today's video is going to be very different from everything I've done before. And now it's going to be about birds.
Ostriches? More like ostracizing.
My best friend Haley randomly one night was like, hey, did you know birds aren't real? What? What? Birds aren't real. But you see birds all the time. I see birds all the time. We have 2 bird feeders in my front yard. I see birds a lot, actually. No, those aren't real. They're not real birds. No, government birds. Okay, prove it. Well, needless to say, she fell asleep because she falls asleep at 10:30 pretty much every night. And I stayed up until 5 a.m. figuring out why birds aren't real. And now I don't know if birds are real. So just for a second, forget everything you've ever known about birds. Forget every common sense thing you've ever learned and just hear me out. I'm going to show you the timeline that people who think birds aren't real have figured out.
Welcome to bird history.
So here's the timeline. In 1946, Harry Truman passed the Bird Drone Initiative. There's a big gap. And then in 1953, the guy who was the head of the CIA at the time ordered 120 B-52 bombs be made by the Boeing Airplane Company. These were to be constructed by the Boeing engineers at Area 51 in the United States. 22 of the 23 men actually arrived at Area 51, which I will explain later in the evidence portion of this. But the 22 men get there, they get their instructions, and are told to build the 120 B-52s and make sure they can hold 450 gallons of water each. Over the next 2 years, they finished 120 of the B-52s. Once they were completed, they were attached to the nose of a plane that was painted entirely black. It very specifically says 5 coats of jet black paint. The reason that they had to have 450 gallons of space for water is in combination with water that would be placed into the B-52s, they were putting a poison that only affected birds. The planes would take the bombs into the sky, they would go 8,000 feet into the air, drop the bombs, and by the time it got down close enough to where humans would be, it had evaporated, only attaching to things in flight in the sky. The poison, as they call it, was actually a virus. It would attach to the bird's feathers, and within 24 hours of a bird being contaminated by the virus, it would be completely decomposed, nothing left behind. The Water the Country initiative was passed. Their goal was to water the grass of the entire country. Over the 6 years of this act being in place, 72% of the bird population decreased. In 1963, President Kennedy found out about the bird replacement scheme and decided that was not going to happen. But before he got the chance to stop it, he was assassinated. This plan continued until 2001, when the last living bird died. Coinciding with this, George W. Bush passed the Patriot Act. The worldwide knows this was a response in part to 9/11 and other terror attacks of the year having to do with anthrax, but the bird timeline is also a part of this. The Patriot Act is uniting and strengthening America, providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism act. Now, the Bird Brigade believes that the tools referenced in the Patriot Act are robot birds, because robot birds are surveilling us, and that surveillance can be used as a tool to combat terrorism. So that's all for the timeline. Now we're going to look at their evidence.
I will not move from this position until society has accepted the birds are not real.
So their evidence begins with finding witnesses, and one of the witnesses that says they know that the Boeing Aircraft Company was involved was a man who overheard a conversation as they were loading the school bus for their needs. He heard them talking about a playlist that they were going to listen to on the way to Area 51. He describes the two songs that he heard them say on the playlist as "I Left My Honey for Area 51" and "Let's Kill All the Birds." He also noted that both sides of the bus had words written on it saying Area 51 or bust. The Bird Brigade claims that the reason that they were doing all this is to make them seem like idiots so that they would not be seen as a real threat or actual engineers or someone with intelligence. They wanted to come off as just conspiracy theorists. If you remember, there was 23 at the beginning and then they lost a guy. The guy that was lost, his name was Neil Ford. He was the only engineer to come out of the situation alive. Neil was abandoned at a Waffle House on the way to Area 51, his reason being that he had to use the bathroom too many times on the trip and they were annoyed with him. So they left him at the Waffle House and he had to find his own way back to Seattle. Another piece of evidence that they have is that the B in B-52 stands for bird or barrack. I don't know how barrack applies, but they believe that the B stood for bird. While at Area 51, they lost another member. This member was struck over the head with a wrench used by the CIA agent that brought them there in the first place. He said he wanted to knock some sense into him, and this left the man in a coma until his death. The remaining 21 men were said to have been scared out of their minds, but told they would be released after they completed, which 3 weeks after the completion of the B-52s, they were released, recaptured, and dropped in Vietnam at the front lines where they were never seen or heard from again. The reason that they have the information about the men and the completion of the B-52s is because of 12 pallets, which seems like an odd way to count information, but 12 pallets of papers and proof and documents were found and brought to the Birds Aren't Real Bird Brigade. They claim the planes used were Pratt & Whitney JT3D engines, which made them nearly silent. In one of the transcripts from the 12 pallets, they have on record an ex-CIA deputy saying, yeah, the higher-ups were so annoyed that birds have been dropping fecal matter on their car windows that they vowed to wipe out every single flying feathered creature in North America. It's quite a vendetta. Now about that Watering the Country Act. The chief commanding officer of the Watering the Country didn't tell the pilots what was in it. They explicitly say on their site that we do not blame you for the sins of your superiors. They didn't want anyone who was a pilot to think that they had murdered innocent birds because it wasn't known to them. It was only known to the CIA agents and the one guy who was the chief of the Water the Country thing. Now, this bit of evidence seems, let's just go through it. So President Kennedy was the first president to think anything of it and think that it was wrong. But President Kennedy suspected the head of the CIA of stealing his sandwich every day from the White House. So he bugged his phone and caught a conversation saying this: "I've stole John's lunch again. Haha, he doesn't even know it. I'm going to keep stealing it until he launches a full investigation. Then I'm going to plant a hidden camera and catch his reaction as I dump all the stolen sandwiches on his desk at one time. I'm going to call the show, 'You've Been Cleavered.'" And then someone responded to him saying, "That's going to be so funny. We'll have to play that clip at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. By the way, how's the bird slaughter going? How many birds have we killed so far?" To which person one responded, "We've killed about 1.1 billion birds so far. And the best thing, the robot birds we released in their place have done such a good job that nobody even suspects a thing." So Kennedy heard the conversation and was like, "That's really wrong. We shouldn't be doing that." And then he was assassinated just a little bit after that. Before his assassination, Kennedy was shown a prototype of a bird called Turkey X500. This bird was a specialized killer. It killed bigger birds like falcons and eagles because they were mainly killing just like the small everyday birds and they wanted to kill everybody. Now, I don't know if I really consider this evidence, but I don't really know where else to mention this. The 12 pallets that they say that they were found, one of the authors of the page gives a brief history on why he believes that birds aren't real. And he says that in 2003, a bird, yada yada yada, landed in his hand, and he was able to hear a humming coming from the bird that was in his hand. Now, my cousin thinks that the bird was purring, and that he should have just also assumed that the bird was purring. But he thinks that the bird has mechanical innards, and that's why it was humming at him. A few years later, 2010 or something, he is at home alone, his mother's at work, and a man knocks on the door, and he talks to him a little bit, and somehow the boy tells him the story about the bird in his hand from 2003. And the man says, "Boy, I don't think you're crazy. I think you're the smartest person ever. You get it. You're the only one who sees past the government facade, and I'm gonna give you all 12 pallets." Then he goes on to say how he got these 12 pallets. He was working at a facility and there was a shelf he wasn't supposed to touch. He was using a forklift and he knocked into the shelf and all the paper spilled, and he was able to get pictures at first and then rescue all the documents. Now that we've gone through their history, now that we've gone through their evidence, you know, I have some people in my life who are suspicious of conspiracy theories. I'm very skeptical of conspiracy theories, but when I just take off my common sense helmet and I just, you know, stop protecting myself, I just let all the information come in, I start to think, are birds real? And so I wanted to ask someone who will believe anything, who's very open-minded and non-judgmental, so I called my cousin. Her name is Casey. She has a YouTube channel. Let's go talk to her.
Here I am, a normal day. I go outside to feed my pet turtle, okay? So he lives in the back of the yard, so I put on the big old mud boots that we have to wear. So I'm clomping out into the yard, and then my dog, one of my two dogs starts barking, and she's looking like straight up in the sky, and I was like, what kind of dog do I have that looks straight up into the sky? And so then I walk over to her, and I'm looking up too, and I see a giant bird, like a huge bird, and I'm like, ooh, yikes. And then I'm sitting there and I'm watching the bird with her. And my other dog comes over and they're standing on either side of me. And this bird, it's a huge vulture, okay? It flies up so high. It's like a tiny little speck in the sky. I'm like, oh, I wonder where it's going. And then all of a sudden I realize that it's getting bigger. And I'm like, it's coming back. It's coming back down here. And so it just starts coming down, like dive bombing us. And all three of us were like looking up at it. Me and my two dogs, okay? And when it gets so low, and then in my brain, in like half a second, I was like, it's gonna attack me. And then right when I thought that, I started running, and I was screaming, and both my dogs ran the other way, so we were all running in a different direction in the yard, and we were in circles, and I was screaming, and it was a mess, and the bird got so close to me. It got so close to me, I could feel the air on my head from the wing, and in my head, I was like, I almost just died, and so I'm trying to figure out how to get away from this bird, because it's still following me. So I'm running around the yard, something that I do not do often / at all. And so I'm like running, my dogs are running. I'm trying to figure out how to get under the porch. Every time I go near my house, it goes low, like right there. So I have to run the other way. It's a huge mess. It took me like 3 minutes to get back underneath the porch. So me and the dogs are finally at the porch. I think I'm chilling. I'm like, I just escaped death. Like, I made it. I'm fine. And so I'm like, I wonder where it went. So I take a step out, and as soon as I take a step out, that thing flies down and it lands across from the pool, and it's just looking straight into my eyes. And I was like, I'm gonna die. And so right in that second, I felt me and this bird connecting. I was like, this is a demon, and this is my time. So I turn around and I'm clomping across the deck in these giant mud boots that aren't even mine, and the dogs run inside. I'm trying to kick these shoes off to get back inside. So finally I slam the door and we go inside and I open the blinds. It hadn't even been like 10 seconds since I got inside the house, okay? The bird is already underneath the porch, just like walking around, pecking a little rock on the ground, and I was like, And then one of my dogs starts barking at it, like a dog does. And that thing, like, we're sitting right here, the bird is looking straight. When she starts barking, the bird's like, and I was like, oh, hell no, that's it, nope. And I flipped the blinds closed, and I was like, that's it for my life, that's done, I'm moving. So then, this is really stressful to talk about again. So then, I had to leave my house, and so I like, whatever, like, it's been an hour or so, like, the bird's probably gone. So I walk into my garage, and I'm waiting for it to open, and it takes forever, because, of course, and it starts opening, like, really slowly, and I see these two crusty feet sitting on my car, and I was like, are you serious? So I bent down. It was the bird. It was just staring into my soul, again, with its crazy beady little eyes. And so I'm, like, looking at the car that it's on. My car is, like, down the driveway a little bit, and I'm like, okay. Like, I know if I run right now, it's going to attack me and peck my eyes out. So I look to my right, and I see two little pebbles. So I picked them up, and I threw one, and it didn't move. It didn't even blink. So I was like, okay. So then I'm sitting there, and I'm, like, evaluating my surroundings and what I'm going to do. And then I throw the other rock, and it, like, does a little, like, jumpy. I'm like, okay, we're making progress. Like, I'll be fine. So I find a little stick, and I throw it, and it flies away, and it zooms so fast. And I was like, it's my time. So I sprinting as fast as I can to my car, and then I see it in the sky, and I was like, oh no, please not again. And so it's flying around me, it's getting lower and lower, and I was like, you know, this would be a good thing to record. So I started recording it because whatever. And then it, like, goes behind my house, and I was like, whew, I'm safe. And then I was, like, slowly getting in my car, and then out of nowhere, from around the other side, I see this thing flying full speed, and I jump on my car, and I close the door, and it just lands back on my other car, and I was like, and it's just staring at me still until I backed out. It did not move when I left. It didn't do anything. It just sat there and was like, and then that's the whole story. I left, didn't want to come back, but I did.
So after that experience, do you think birds are real? Or do you think birds are robots?
So here's the thing. I don't know, because if that was a real bird, it has some real problems. But if that was a robot, it would make a lot of sense. But then how would it stare and connect with me into my eyes? I want to say real bird. But I just don't know. It's too confusing to know.
You just can't be sure.
No, because it was so strange. Like, what bird in its little brain thinks, I'm going to follow that girl? None of them think that.
I mean, because you're alive. It's not like you were displaying, I'm dead, I'm dying, come get me, vulture.
Like, you were moving. Like, my dogs are huge. It wasn't like a little chihuahua that it was going to, like, ooh, snack, you know? Like, there's absolutely no way my dogs are going up with this vulture, okay? Like, there's no reason for it to have been circling us and attacking me with its eyes.
Okay, so birds are real, but they also might not be real.
Exactly.
Now, nobody else wanted to talk to me on camera about it, mostly because it's really late at night and everybody else has a job but me.
Birds are not real, they're a myth, they're an illusion. Thank you for your time.
Why birds? If the government could do this to birds, why not something else? Like spiders, or dogs, or cats. Things we willingly go out and pick to put in our home. My cat listens to my every conversation. She's not here right now, which is crazy, but normally she's right by my side. Another question I have is bird watchers. What are bird watchers doing? If they're just looking at robot birds, they take pictures of them all the time. Somebody would have caught a malfunctioning bird, or one with like wires sticking out of it, or like a microchip. Why not? Why hasn't a bird watcher come forward and said, I found a robot bird? So after talking with my cousin, she thinks that bird watchers are replacing the batteries. And when she said that, I was like, they probably are. And that makes complete total sense. After listening to all the bird people, the bird brigade. So bird brigade, if you ever see this, those are my thoughts. Those are my questions. I need to know more. I need more proof. I'm on the fence. I could go either way at this point. It wouldn't really affect me much, because I'm not going to stop liking birds. Literally 2 videos ago on my channel, I was telling everyone about Rogers Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, and they focus mainly on birds. They have pelicans and little chichi birds and hawks and owls. Even if they aren't real, I still think they're really cute. And they did a great job formulating the robots. I want to take care of the robot birds. So give this video a thumbs up if you think birds are real. Give this video a thumbs up if you think birds aren't real. Give this video a thumbs up if you felt like it put you on the fence. Subscribe if you like that I'm doing different stuff. And if you want to see more things like whatever this was. Until next time, I'm going to keep living my best life, whether birds are real or not. And you should too. Bye! There aren't real birds. Only government birds.